Things are already getting worse for Trump in the federal classified documents case before they've even gotten off the ground. Politico's Kyle Cheney and Josh Gerstein made a great catch today in a filing by Jack Smith's team. The DOJ submitted a filing writing, Chief Judge Boasberg made available independent counsel, the first assistant in the federal public defender's office for the District of Columbia, to provide advice to Trump employee 4 regarding potential conflicts. On July 5th, 2023, Trump employee 4 informed Chief Judge Boasberg that he no longer wished to be represented by Mr. Woodward and that, going forward, he wished to be represented by the first assistant federal defender. Immediately after receiving new counsel, Trump employee 4 retracted his prior false testimony and provided information that implicated Nauta, De Oliveira, and Trump in efforts to delete security camera footage as set forth in the superseding indictment. Now, Trump employee 4 has been identified as Yuscil Taveras, an information technology worker at Mar-a-Lago who oversaw the surveillance camera footage at the property. He had initially testified that he was unaware of any effort to erase video surveillance footage, but apparently, after getting a new attorney, he immediately retracted his false testimony and began cooperating with prosecutors to the detriment of defendants like Walt Nauta, Carlos de Oliveira, and Donald Trump. And to give you an idea of just how deep in the thick of it Taveras is, you might want to look at the indictment. On Monday, June 27, 2022, De Oliveira walked to the IT office where Trump employee 4 was working with another employee in the IT department. De Oliveira requested that Trump employee 4 step away from the office so that they could talk. They then left the area of the IT office together and walked through a basement tunnel. De Oliveira took Trump employee 4 to a small room known as the audio closet near the white and gold ballroom. Once inside the audio closet, De Oliveira and Trump employee 4 had the following exchange. De Oliveira told Trump employee 4 that their conversation should remain between the two of them. De Oliveira asked Trump employee 4 how many days the server retained footage. Trump employee 4 responded that he believed it was approximately 45 days. De Oliveira told Trump employee 4 that the boss wanted the server deleted. Trump employee 4 responded that he would not know how to do that and that he did not believe that he would have the right to do that. Trump employee 4 told De Oliveira that De Oliveira would have to reach out to another employee who was a supervisor of security for Trump's business organization. De Oliveira then insisted to Trump employee 4 that the boss wanted the server deleted and asked, "What are we going to do?" So if there was any doubt about the extent to which Taveras has incriminating information about Donald Trump and his co-conspirators in this case, this update should put that to rest. And in case you're wondering why Taveras would retract his testimony immediately after dropping his attorney, it's probably worth looking into exactly who his attorney is. His name is Stanley Woodward, according to Politico. He's ubiquitous in cases involving Trump associates and is representing a number of defendants in both the federal classified documents case and the federal election theft case in court. He's currently busy stoking concerns about the use of a D.C. grand jury in a case taking place in Florida, which of course is intended to give Trump and his co-defendant Walt Nauta a tactical advantage. And not to bury the lead here, but it's probably worth noting that Donald Trump's PAC is paying all of Woodward's legal fees. So that should probably answer some question as to why his clients may feel pressured to lie on behalf of Donald Trump, since their counsel is quite literally being paid by the guy. It should also explain why, the moment they're not indebted to this Trump-aligned lawyer anymore, suddenly they manage to find their way to tell the truth. Pretty amazing how even during prosecution, Donald Trump finds a way to continue obstructing justice, tampering with witnesses, and lying. I spoke with former federal prosecutor and current candidate for California's 41st Congressional District, Will Rollins, about the prospect of co-defendants and witnesses flipping, and while we focus mostly on the Fulton County case and the 2020 election theft case, the same logic applies to this classified documents case as well. Here's what Will had to say. Can you walk us through the process of what it would look like if and when a defendant decides to flip?
Yeah, I mean, some of the same considerations I just discussed a second ago for Donald Trump, those are going to be amplified big time for the defendants who are not running for political office and who do not have this sort of long shot chance at a pardon from a Republican governor in Georgia. I think those defendants and co-defendants with Trump are going to be under a lot more pressure, actually, to cooperate because they understand the likelihood of getting prison time if they don't cooperate with the government. So I think what would happen in both cases, even though some of the others have not yet been indicted in the Smith indictment in D.C., they've certainly been able to identify a lot of who those unindicted co-conspirators are. And the sooner the defense attorneys get those defendants or putative defendants to walk in and talk to the government, the more likely it is that they get reduced time in prison or no time in prison, depending on how helpful they are to the government. And so a lot of the defense attorneys representing these 19 or so co-defendants in both of these cases, or future co-defendants, are going to be talking to their clients and advising them to come in earlier, because the earlier you come in, generally the more lenient your sentence is going to be down the road. So I think a lot of those conversations are taking place right now.
And why not have done this sooner? Why wait until your name is included in a state prosecution, is included in an indictment, for you to finally recognize, oh shit, this is real, I better do something about it?
I mean, I think a lot of them didn't know how strong the evidence was, despite what the public reporting was. And a lot of this had been publicly reported before the indictment came down. I think the theories of liability also were probably unclear to a lot of the defense attorneys. But what I like in particular about the DC indictment is that it focuses on the criminal aspect of fraud, not this, First Amendment BS that the far right has kind of been spewing. And even frankly, it's made its way into more, mainstream conservative outlets. And I think when you see that this entire conspiracy, and really in both cases, involves submission of fraudulent documents or obstruction of official government proceedings, it makes those arguments for criminal liability a lot clearer and easier for defense attorneys to articulate to their clients, to say, this is how strong the evidence is against you. This is what your liability looks like. You are looking at some serious time if you don't come in and cooperate. So I think now that those charges are laid out in a clearer fashion, we will eventually see, I think, some people come in. It's going to have to be done very surreptitiously, given the risk to their lives. I mean, we've seen what happened with the grand jurors being threatened in Georgia. I mean, these are people who just got called in for jury duty. I mean, a lot of them probably tried to get out of it. I think people don't like serving. And I mean, you shouldn't, because it's your civic duty. But, we've all been in those rooms, if you've ever had jury duty, where people are, oh, no, I don't want the disruption. I want to try and get out of it. I mean, think about these people who were sitting there listening to this evidence, and then now are being confronted with death threats just for doing their jobs. I mean, these are our neighbors. These are people selected at random. There is no partisan pre-screening process. And I think, unfortunately, there's so much disinformation out there around the nature of how our criminal justice system works, unfortunately, because of the lack of political leadership from the Republican Party, that we've just seen these horrible threats against law enforcement and now the grand jurors in Georgia developing. And it's really corrosive to our democracy.
And keep in mind, this is only one witness to flip on Trump in one trial. In the Fulton County case, he's got 18 other co-defendants. In the federal classified documents case, there's also Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira. And as it becomes more and more clear that the option is going to be prison time and blind fealty to Trump, or freedom and cooperation with prosecutors, I wouldn't exactly bank on these folks throwing their entire lives away in deference to a guy who, let's be honest, doesn't exactly have great prospects either. Trump himself is facing 91 charges. I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that this may not be the guy to hitch your wagon to. And look, there will of course be those who are perfectly content to hang on to Donald Trump's coattails in hopes that they'll win the presidential election in 2024 and then use the levers of government to evade accountability for himself and his co-defendants, which is, of course, the great irony of this guy having anointed himself the law and order candidate while simultaneously relying on the powers of the presidency to expressly be able to avoid being subject to law and order. Because at the end of the day, there is nothing that Donald Trump does better than project. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.